Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining in from, and welcome to this webinar. I'm Rahul. I'm a co-founder at ImageKit IO. And in this webinar, we are going to be looking at some practical use of AI and GenAI for images on the web using ImageKit. In the last few months, there has been an incredible buzz around AI and generative AI, especially for creating new images. You might have used the latest models released by OpenAI, available through their ChatGPT prompt to create images. Or very recently, just yesterday, Google came out with some new image models as a part of their Gemini offering. But while all of these are great models and the best models available out there, when it comes to using them with your existing product images, maybe with your existing banners or files that are there in your cloud storage like a S3, it becomes really difficult to actually put these models into use and get your experiments with generative AI live on the website. It could be that the quality is off. It could be that it does not match your brand requirements. It could be that it is difficult to get these Gen AI features working at scale if you have hundreds of thousands of images to get them to work on. So in this webinar, we will try to bridge that gap, right? At ImageKit, we have been offering AI and Gen AI features to our customers for quite some time. And we have looked at what are some of the common ways in which customers are actually using these features on production and getting more creative with AI and generative AI with the images on their website, right? So in this webinar, we will look at some actual examples of what are these real life applications of the AI features that are available in ImageKit. And hopefully at the end of the webinar, you will have some more ideas on how you can leverage these features for your product images, for creating ads at scale, for, let's say, creating banners at scale, and do more for your business, maybe even without ImageKit as well, right? During this course of the webinar, if you have any questions, we'll take a break in between, but if you have any questions, just put them in the Q&A section. There will be some polls as well from time to time during the webinar. It would be really helpful if you provide us with feedback or provide us with your answers to those questions. That really helps us improve not just the webinar, but even our overall product, right? So let's quickly get started. ImageKit does offer quite a few AI and generative AI features, right? So remove background, change background, expanding images using generative AI to adapt them to different platforms and devices, being able to create images in real time using a text prompt, and many more features such as adding shadows, creating a variant of an existing image, smart cropping, etc. Now, you might be wondering that all of these features are already available in quite a few other tools that are out there, right? So what's so special about ImageKit, right? What is it that ImageKit does differently when it offers these AI or generative AI features, right? And the key parts that are different in ImageKit are as follows, right? So all of these transformations that we provide, all the Gen AI transformations, all of them are available through the URL, right? So if you are familiar with using ImageKit, you would know that you can apply simple transformations such as resizing or cropping directly in the image URL, right? So if you want to, let's say, resize an image to a different width, you can just pass it in the URL and your image gets resized in real time, right? So very similar to that, all the AI features that we discuss in the webinar today, all of them would work through the same URL-based transformation API. Now, what this means is that you can then implement it in your code the same way that you have implemented, let's say, resizing features or cropping features for your images. You can use even the generative AI features in the exact same way in your application, right? This also means that you would be able to combine these features with all the other transformations as well, right? Uh, so for example, if you want to combine, let's say, a generated image, you created an image using a prompt, and then you want to combine it with, let's say, resizing, and then you want to watermark the image as well. All of these are like one of those 50 plus other transformations that are available in ImageKit. So you would be able to combine these generative AI transformations with all the other 50 plus transformations that exist in ImageKit, and you would be able to use them for the images, all the images that are accessible via ImageKit, whether they are stored in your S3, in your Google Cloud Storage, or they're available in the ImageKit Media Library, you would be able to use GenAI features on all of these images, making it truly available at scale. And since it works directly from the URL, so all the other features that you expect from ImageKit, which is fast delivery using a CDN, automatic format optimization, and automatic compression, that gets taken care of. You don't have to store your images elsewhere. You can use these features with your existing images and your existing storage that's connected to ImageKit. So that is what makes the GenAI and the AI features that are available in ImageKit really different from all the other solutions that are available out there, right? In this webinar, as I had mentioned earlier, it would not be just a simple demonstration of the features that we have in ImageKit, but we would be looking at actual practical use cases that customers solve using ImageKit, right? So we would be covering 5 use cases. First one would be creating consistent product images, uh, especially applicable for e-commerce. The second one would be replacing your backgrounds for product placements, like if you want to experiment with a different product placement or you want to create a lifestyle shot of an existing product. So how do we do that with generative AI? How do we expand our images to fit to newer devices? Like, let's say, how do you fit a square image to a mobile vertical aspect ratio? How do we create new images for creatives or blogs, or let's say your open graph images that get shared on Facebook, on social media, etc. And then the last one and the most important one, and in fact the most widely used one, is that how do you combine all of these features and all of the other transformations in ImageKit to create ads at scale, right? So let's get started with the first one. How do we create consistent product images using these generative AI and AI transformations? I've created a sample application to walk you through all of these practical use cases that we will discuss. In the first one, you see 2 rows of products, right? The first one is the input for our reference. And the second one is what we're actually going to modify, right? As you can see on my screen, these 4 images are in very different aspect ratios. The first two are in fact vertical. The third and fourth are in a horizontal aspect ratio. The product placement in all of them is different, right? So in this one, the product is on the right. In this one, the product is on the left, whereas in the first two, the product is at the center. The size of the product inside the image is also very different, right? So this product, for example, occupies almost 60% of the space, the vertical space in the image, whereas this product occupies very little space horizontally in this particular image. And I have this transformation box available at the top. So whatever transformations I apply will get applied to all the images, and we will see the output at the bottom, right? So to get started, as I had mentioned, all the AI transformations are available via the URL. So I'll just go ahead and add the first URL transformation, which is I want to remove the background for all of these images, right? So we are starting off with very different backgrounds. The first thing that we want to do is to just remove the background from all of these images using AI. And it can be done using this eremove.bg transformation. When I click on apply, you would see that the background from all of the images gets removed. And if I just show you one of the images, you can see that this is nothing but a parameter in the URL itself, right? It's not a new image that's loading. The original image, if I just remove this parameter, the original image still has the background that you saw earlier. And if I just add the remove.bg parameter, it just removes the background, right? So it's an actual transformation that's getting applied on images. Um, Now, on most platforms, you actually do not need a transparent background image, right? You need a solid colored background, which is, let's say, either white or let's say a light gray background. So I'll go ahead and add the next step of the transformation. If you notice, I'm using a colon to separate the first step with the next step. So in the first step, we remove the background. And now in the second step, we will add a light gray background to all the images. I've used the hex code F1, 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 which corresponds to light gray. If I apply this, you can see that now all the images have a solid gray colored background. Again, let's just check the URL to ensure that we are actually doing URL transformations. And as you can see, the background remove followed by the background color that we want now appears in the URL, right? Uh, this is great, but we still have a problem, right? So while we have achieved a consistent product background, our images, or let's say the products inside these images, are not consistent, right? So like we had said that in this case, the product is on the right. In this case, the product is on the left. We want to make that consistent as well, right? So the first thing that we want to do is to actually trim everything else around the product, right? We just want to extract the product from this image, right? So if I add a transformation which is trim inside ImageKit, which is represented by T-true, I will basically be able to trim out all the edges around the image, right? So now I just have the actual product in each of these images to play with. And let's say I want to decide that my product itself should be at max a 600 by 600 size, right? Like I want to create a 1000 by 1000 pixel image eventually, and I want my product to be at max 600 by 600 in that 1000 by 1000 pixel image. So I'll go ahead and I'll add this transformation, which applies to my product since we have already extracted the product from the image. I'll just apply this. You do not see any difference because of the CSS in this sample application. So I'll just quickly go ahead and create the final image as well. I want a 1000 by 1000 pixel final image. I want it to be, I want to add some padding around the actual product, right? So I'll add the crop mode as pad extract in ImageKit, and I will use the same background that we had earlier, right? So once I apply this, this is the actual consistent image, right? So all of the images starting from very different aspect ratios and starting from very different product placements in these images, we are able to get to consistent 1000 by 1000 pixel images where the products are sized and the same across all of these images. They are placed at the center. They are equally big in all of these images, which makes it consistent and really easy to use on your own website. Or let's say, even if you have to send out these images to a third party marketplace, let's say you have to publish your products on Amazon, and maybe that marketplace has a requirement that, I do not want a gray image. Gray image is maybe good for your own website, but for the marketplace, you need to send it to us in a white background. Now, the change with ImageKit, because all of these transformations are getting done in near real time and they can be done directly via the URL, the change is very simple. I'll just go ahead and change it to the white background color. Let's say I'll use the color code for white and I'll just replace both the background colors with white. Once I apply this, you can now see that I have white background images available, right? So if I open this in a new tab, you can see that I have a consistent white background image available from the original image that we started off with. Let's look at a different category of products as well. Let's say we go with shoes. Again, we had shoes in different backgrounds and different orientations. This one was a vertical image. And at the end of it, we are able to get white background images for all the shoes. Let's just try the gray background that we had earlier. And you can see that we are able to create these consistent product images out of whatever we start off with, right? So it's really great if you have a lot of, let's say, legacy images, or if you have images that are being uploaded by, let's say, a lot of sellers on your platform or by users on your platform, and they're uploading their images to sell their products. So by using a combination of AI along with all the other transformations that you see over here, you can create really consistent visual experiences on your website or apps, right? One key thing to note over here, I used two kinds of separators for our transformations, and this would be key as we discuss more about AI transformations. In some places, I used a colon, and in some places, I used a comma to separate transformations, right? So the key difference is that a colon acts like a separate step, right? So when I separate two transformations by a colon, I'm essentially saying that do a remove background first, then the output of remove background gets the gray background, and then the output of this step gets this entire set of transformations, right? So everything that's separated by a comma gets applied at the same time. Everything that's separated by a colon gets applied one after the other, right? So when you're applying AI transformation, it becomes important, if you want to reuse the output of that Gen AI transformation or that AI transformation with other transformations in ImageKit, that you utilize these step transformations or chain transformations is what we call them in ImageKit, that you separate them via this colon so that you can use the output of a remove background transformation with other transformations in ImageKit, right? So this was the first practical use case that we have already seen our customers use on production. In the first one, we were obviously removing the background and replacing it with the plain gray background. But what's more interesting is that can you change the background completely, right? So in a lot of cases, people do have, let's say, one variant of a product photograph, right? So maybe they clicked it on a plain white background, or maybe they clicked it on one kind of, let's say, lifestyle background. But now, let's say it's been live on your website for 6 months. Now you want a different variation of it, maybe to use on social media, maybe to use on email, or maybe just to refresh the creatives on your own website, and you need a different product placement for that particular product, right? And in a lot of cases, doing a reshoot is either not possible or it's super expensive to go ahead and do a reshoot of the product, right? So to counter that, we have this generative AI features which allows you to change the background of an image to create a completely new product placement that you can then use on different places. Let's say you can use them on your website, or you can use that to create, let's say, new ads or new graphics for your own social media, right? So let's take a look at this example for changing product placement. Again, we are starting off with the same shoes that we had. The first one is the input image that we are using. And at the for the second image, you can see over here that this is the prompt that we are using, right? So when we are changing a background, we need to also specify the text prompt that we want to be used to create that background, right? So in this case, I provided a very simple short prompt on a road, right? And when I do this, the Gen AI models, they are able to imagine a new product placement for this shoe. And just quickly to verify that this is just applied via the URL transformation itself. It's not a separate image, right? I'll go ahead and apply the other transformations as well. So for example, on a field of grass, or let's say minimal concrete studio with soft lighting, right? So as you can see in all of these cases, one thing that you must note is that the actual product is not changing at all, right? So if you see the shoe and the orientation of the shoe or the placement, that is retained exactly as it is in all of the variants, right? So in change background, we do not actually change anything on the product. It's just the background that changes. What we also do is adjust the shadows based on the the background that's getting created, and that would be more evident in the next example that I have, right? So let's take this example of cars, right? I have this car on a plain white background. In fact, it's a transparent background in this case. And I apply the same prompt on a road to the car as well, right? So now two things to notice here. One, the first thing that I'd mentioned, that we automatically adjust for shadows. So you can see that a shadow has been added under the car, right? So depending on the kind of, let's say, background that you're generating. So for example, in this case, it's evening through the city. This actually generates, a rainy, let's say a wet road. And you can see that there are reflections that get generated on the road as well. And then the shadow is a bit different than the shadow in the first image, right? So the shadows that get added when you are changing background, they are added to make the new background look realistic, right? So your shadows could be a bit different when you create different kinds of backgrounds, but the image does not change at all. That image remains consistent, right? The other thing to notice over here is that I applied the same transformation, right? I provided the same prompt to change the background on a road to the car, and when we had the shoe, I had applied on a road to the shoe as well, right? So in both the cases, the background that gets generated is different, right? So the key thing to note here is that ImageKit also takes into account the actual image content or the actual product that's there inside the image, along with the prompt that's being provided to be able to come up with a suitable background, right? So if you had a full body shot of a person maybe wearing a t-shirt and a jeans, and then you apply the same transformation on a road, it would create something that's completely different compared to, let's say, the background that we had for a shoe, or let's say the background that we had for a car when we applied the same transformation for on road, right? And in the last one, let's say in this case, for a car, we've created something with the prompt that on an open road with fields and sunset in the background. Let's take a look at one more example. And this is really useful if you maybe have an e-commerce website or you use a lot of stock photography. It's difficult to find a lot of stock images often, right? So let's say I have this particular stock image, which I downloaded before the webinar, and I want slightly different variation of it for my use case, right? And I want to maybe change the background in this case from a plain gray background to, let's say, that of an office, or maybe that of a college classroom with a board behind it. or let's say in a restaurant during the day with chairs and tables in the distance, right? So using these background change transformations, not only is it, let's say, good for your product images where there is a single hero product and you want to experiment with different product placements, but it is also good to just make good use of the stock photography that you have already purchased from third-party websites, and you want to create, let's say, a slightly different variation of that image before you use that on your website, or you just want to refresh the image that you had already purchased, right? So this is, let's say, this particular transformation, the change background transformation, it actually helps you avoid costs on doing reshoots or maybe, purchasing new creatives, because you can then create your own creatives in real time. What you should not expect, part of it we have already covered, that you should not expect the product itself or the main subject itself of the image to change with this particular transformation, right? So for example, if you have let's say we had the shoe in the first image. So you should not expect this transformation to be able to imagine the shoe in a different orientation, right? So we are not changing the actual product or the actual subject of the image at all. It's only the background that gets changed. And it's currently not possible with this change background transformation that you specify only changes to a part of the background, right? So for example, you cannot say that, okay, I just want maybe some flowers placed in the top left corner, right? So that's not possible. Currently, we only replace the entire background, and the entire image gets a completely new background, right? So we are working on, let's say, this ability to be able to specify only parts of background that need to be changed. But as of now, it would be the entire background that gets changed for an image. Right. So before I discuss the next use case, let's see if you have any questions. Maybe you can just put it in the chat and I'll answer that for you. We'll just take a pause for a minute to see if there are any questions at this stage. Okay, so no questions as of now. You can keep putting them in the Q&A section, and I'll just move forward, right? So till now, the two use cases that we have discussed, let's say removing the background or replacing the background, both of them actually did not even change the aspect ratio of the image, right? So in the first example where we created consistent product images, we used some resizing parameters, etc., to create a different aspect ratio, but the AI transformation in itself does not change the aspect ratio of the image, right? So when we did the remove background, it just removed the background from the image as it is, right? But there are quite a few cases, especially if you have, let's say, product images from, let's say, you click them a few years back and you click them in a specific aspect ratio, which was according to the design that you had at that time. And you click them maybe in a 1:1 aspect ratio. But now, let's say your business has, grown a lot and there are a lot of mobile customers that are there. Now you want to have product images that fit a vertical aspect ratio on the mobile screen, right? Now it's almost impossible to again, go back and do a reshoot and convert those 1:1 product images. Maybe you will need to find the original images that were shot back in, let's say, a few years back. But with the generative fill AI transformation, companies are actually able to modify their existing images that were shot in a different aspect ratio and get them to adapt to a new aspect ratio as per their requirements, right? So let's take a look at some examples of what this looks like in practice. Again, we are starting off with the same car image that we had in our last example. And I'll go ahead and apply a transformation where I want it to fit a more vertical screen on a mobile device, right? So I'll have a smaller width and a bigger height than the width so that it becomes vertical. When I just do this, let's say when I just apply the width and the height, the default behavior is that we try to crop out a 400 by 600 image out of the original image, right? So obviously this is not suitable for displaying on mobile. I want my entire image to be there. So I'll go ahead and add a different kind of crop mode from ImageKit, which is pad resize, that I'm basically asking ImageKit that if the required transformation does not match the original aspect ratio, then just pad the image while you're resizing it, right? And to demonstrate how the padding works, I'll just add a red colored background, right? Because the rest of the background is white. So you can actually see that ImageKit does resize the image to 400 by 600. The entire original product image is retained, and the padding that had to be added around the image is added in this red color, right? So this is obviously not great. You can replace it with any other color, but it would still not be the best possible image that you can create, right? And that is where AI comes in. We have this transformation called Gen Fill, which is basically short for generative fill, which takes into account the image that you provide. And it then tries to, instead of this solid red colored background that we had over here, it will try to imagine the details and make it look like a realistic image that was created, let's say, in a 400 by 600 aspect ratio, right? So when I apply this, you can see that with the help of generative AI, the parts above, let's say, the original image that was there, which is basically the clouds, and then this road, this is completely been imagined by GenAI, right? It's not something that was a part of the original image. Again, to validate it, let's just open it in a new tab. If I just remove this transformation from the file, it's still a squarish image with no, let's say, extra details at the top and the bottom. And if I apply this transformation, which has the gen fill background, generative AI adds these details at the top and the bottom, right? So this works really great if you have images in a different aspect ratio and you want to adapt them to a vertical aspect ratio for, let's say, different device, right? So right now, when I added GenFill, it added details both at the top and the bottom of the image. But let's say I just want it to be at the top and I want my actual product to stay at the bottom. I want to change the alignment of the product in the final image that gets generated. So you can combine this with another ImageKit transformation, which is focus bottom. This basically instructs ImageKit to keep the product image, the original image at the bottom, right? So the focus applies to the original image itself. When I do this, you can see that my original image is now at the bottom, and generative AI has been used to imagine all the details above the image or in the top part of the image, right? So using the generative AI feature, which is BG GenFill, along with all the other transformations that are there, and you can basically now apply this to maybe thousands of product images that you would have in, let's say, an aspect ratio like this. And instantly you would have images that look great on maybe a mobile device, right? Let's take a look at another example. I'll just copy this transformation so that I can apply this to my next example as well. I have a bag and I'll go ahead and apply the same transformation to make it vertical. You can see in this case, AI basically added some details at the bottom. If you look very closely, you might be able to make out that, okay, this is AI generated, but it still blends in pretty well with these leaves that have fallen. AI has basically tried to turn this light that you see in the background, this light part that you see in the background, into a tree trunk. Still works out fine. I can also, instead of, let's say, just making it vertical, there are cases where companies actually use it to make it, or let's say to stretch it horizontally, so that they can then adapt it to, let's say, a blog banner, or let's say a website banner. Maybe they started off with a square image, now they want to create a banner out of it, right? So let's say if I apply a bigger width and a smaller height, which is basically making the image horizontal, so you can see that the addition has now been done on the left and the right, not at the top and the bottom by GenAI. And again, I can force the product to be only in a specific side of the image, right? So let's say I want my bag to be only on the right side of the image. And when I apply this transformation, Gen AI basically imagines everything that's there on the left, right? So if we just open it quickly, you can see that the part, I think, beyond, let's say, this particular line, everything else has been imagined using generative AI, and it blends pretty well with the rest of the image that we had, right? So this is one of the more common use cases that we have already seen our customers using on their live websites, where they're converting their legacy images into images that adapt well on new platforms, right? Uh, in all the examples that we have looked till now, we've only looked at cases where we already have an image, and whatever we are doing, we are actually not changing the product or the image itself, right? So we are we're not reimagining the actual product that's there inside the image, right? But there could be some cases where you want to start from scratch, right? So you have a, let's say, an idea of an image that you want, and you're not able to find it. It's not there in your existing photography, but you want to create something completely new. Now, this would not be, let's say, applicable to create a new product image, because products need to be represented accurately. But it could be for some other creative purposes, let's say for using on your blog, or let's say for creating, let's say, images that get shared on social media, maybe to create some banners for some ads that you're going to run. So for all of these purposes, you might want to generate new images as well, right? Or let's say you might not be able to find the exact stock for photograph that you're looking for, and you want to just give a prompt and be able to generate that, and not have to find the exact image instead. Now, to do that, again, this is also a feature in ImageKit, which is available not just from the URL-based transformations that we have been looking at, but it's also available in the media library of your dashboard. If you go back and log into ImageKit, you would find an option to create images inside the dashboard as well. But as you can see in this case, I'm basically continuing with the same example of the bag that we had in the last case, right? In this case, I've used a prompt, a blue backpack with some orange handles in the center, kept on a rock on the beach with blue sea and sunset in the background. Now you can see that the bag does not exactly match the bag that we had in our previous example, right? So if I just show you the bag that we had in the previous example, it was this, whereas what AI was able to generate was slightly different. But like I said, uh, generating images using these prompts is not, let's say, useful for products. But it's great, let's say, if you want to create maybe a banner or maybe a social media post, maybe you want to use it for some content piece that you're creating. So it's still great for that. And the way it works through the URL is that you can see that the prompt actually comes in the URL itself, right? So with ImageKit, you can specify the entire prompt for the image that you want to create, and you can give the image a name. So in this case, I have given it a name, generated bag image 5.jpg. And this becomes like one single URL that can instantly be used anywhere on the web, right? So you can use this URL directly on social, on your blogs, or on your website, right? Similarly, if I have another example where I have the same bag. Again, you can see that the blue is slightly different. The orange that's used is slightly different. It does not match the original product that we had, but it's still a great image to maybe just create a banner out of it, right? Or maybe to use it on a blog, right? And the prompt that we have used, again, it appears in the URL itself, and it's a blue backpack, but this time it's on a coffee table next to a window. You can also combine two transformations, right? So we can create, let's say, generate an image using the prompt. And then like in this case, I have also stretched it. So the first two images that we saw, the gen image model actually generates a square image, a 1:1 aspect ratio image. But let's say I want to create something for a wider banner, then I can combine it with the generative fill transformation that we have seen earlier. And in this case, I have actually used one of our upcoming image generation models. So you don't see the prompt in the URL itself. So I've created it in one of our staging environments, and I've just saved the image as it is. But the prompt that was used to create this image was a male athlete standing on a racetrack during early morning hours, warming up for a run. This again created a squarish image. And then to expand it to a horizontal aspect ratio, I've used the gen fill transformation that we had just seen, that, I'm applying a width 1200, height 630, and then padding it with the gen fill transformation, right? So I can combine my generated product image with other transformations like gen fill, or let's say height, width, resize, crop, etc., and create a completely new image from scratch that aligns with whatever it is that you are imagining or whatever it is that you want to create, and use that for whatever creative purpose that you have, right? A few things to keep in mind, like we have already discussed. If you should not be using generate image if you want to create a product and you want that product to actually match an actual product, right? So that's really not possible. And also, generate image would not be useful, or it would not look good if you have a case where the possible product set is very limited, right? So imagine you are working for a car company like Toyota, and you want to create a new image, let's say, and you want to have a car on a street, let's say, and you want to create a banner out of it, you cannot have a car that does not exist in production, right? You cannot let AI imagine a car which is maybe not Toyota, or which is not, let's say, one of the 30 models that Toyota currently has in production, right? It has to match exactly one of those 30 products, right? So in those cases where the product set is limited, or you are, you want to match a product itself, then creating an image using these Gen AI prompts would not be very useful. But for everything else, it serves a really great purpose for creating new images for your content, right? We're coming to the last part of the webinar, right? And this is the most important use case, the most useful one as well, that really helps to drive more engagement from your users or drive more conversions, is that how can you combine all of these transformations that we have discussed, combine them with other transformations that are available in ImageKit, especially the overlays, and be able to create ad creatives and do that at scale, right? Not just create like one ad creative, but how can we use that to create maybe hundreds of variations and run quick experiments, which can then be formalized, and then you can finalize on like which creative works the best, right? So before we go to, let's say, creating these ad creatives at scale, I'll just show it to you on how it works for a single image, right? Again, we're starting off with the bag. ImageKit has a special set of transformations which are called the layer transformations. A layer transformation actually allows you to overlay text and image on an existing image, right? So for example, let's say I want to add a text on the image and I want to write the name of the sale that I have on the image. So I just go ahead and add a layer transformation, which is L text, which is basically saying that it's a layer text. My input is the text that I want is mega sale, and layer ends, right? So that's my input. When I apply this, you would not be able to see it at this aspect ratio, but you can see that there is a small text mega sale that's getting added at the center. Obviously, this is not useful, and we need to increase the font size. We need to change the font color. So all of that again can be done from this layer transformation itself, right? So I'm now basically saying that my color should be white, my font size should be 108 pixels, it should be bold, which is what the B stand for, and it should be placed 40 pixels from the left and 150 pixels from the bottom, right? So I'm saying that on the y-axis, it's negative 150. So it gets placed from the bottom, right? Had it been without the n, then it would have been 150 pixels from the top. When I apply this, you can see that the mega sale text, all of these transformations get applied and the mega sale text appears on the image as we intended. Again, just to verify, all of these transformations are a part of my URL, right? So if, let's say, if I wanted it to be something else, right? Let's say I want it to be a New Year sale, I can just change it in my URL. And when I access it, I would be able to get a new image, which has New Year sale written as the text on it, right? Now, in this case, my text does not really have a lot of contrast with my image, right? It's a light background over here and my text is also white. So we can actually go ahead and add a slight gradient and we can place it at the bottom of the image. So before I add the text, I will add first a gradient at the bottom, right? So the width, the gradient will take the full width of the base image, which is what BW stands for. It would be 400 pixels high. It would be placed at the bottom. And this is just basically a transparent to a slightly black gradient, right? So if I apply this, you can see that there is a slightly black gradient that comes in, which basically improves the contrast that I have between my text and the background image. I want to go ahead and add some sort of subtext to my sale. I want to indicate the, let's say, the discount percentage that I have running. So I have this offer 40% off on backpacks. This is the text that I want to write, again in white color, slightly smaller font size, but placed somewhere over here. When I apply this, you can see that the text appears on the image over here. And this is just one single image, right? This is not, let's say, the text is not getting added separately from the image. The output is just one single image that is then usable anywhere on the web, right? And then the last part I want to add the ImageKit logo on this particular image, right? So I'll go ahead and add the last part, which is the ImageKit logo, 300 pixels in width, and I want it to be added 40 pixels from the top and 40 pixels from the right edge, right? So LXN40, right? Now this might look complex because you're probably looking at this for the first time, but once, let's say, a template like this has been set up, once you have decided that, okay, by combining all of these different transformations and, finding out the right placements for each text layer or the font size for each text layer, that becomes like a template for all your creatives. Now, if I want to just change the name of the sale, let's say I want it to be a Thanksgiving sale, I can just change the text. I can change the discount percentage. I can maybe change the name of the product category. And when I apply this, I have all of these applied in real time on the image. And I can, what we look at in the next section, which is where we look at how do we create these ads at scale, you can apply the same template to different kinds of base images to be able to create hundreds of ad creatives starting from maybe just a single image to begin with, right? So let's look at this library of ad creatives that I've created for a few examples. We'll again look at the same bags, right? And I've used different AI features to demonstrate different kinds of creatives that can be generated, right? My template remains the same, a logo on the top right, a big bold text over here, and then the offer text right after that. But in the first case, I'm actually generating an image from scratch. I'm saying it's a medium-sized blue backpack kept on a trail in a forest, right? In the second image, I'm using a blue backpack with flowers and trees in the background. So you can see that the backpack was actually different. It may not match an existing product that's there on a website, but it still makes for a decent ad creative or a decent social media creative to be used. And similarly, like the third example where we are generating an image again from scratch, but this time with a blue sea and a sunset in the background. The next three examples are not being generated from scratch, but these are using the change background transformation that we had seen earlier. So it still matches the original product image that we have, right? So if you look closely, the bag is exactly the same because it's not being generated from scratch. We have just changed the background and we have used that it should be on a rock with snowy mountains behind it, right? And if I open this in a new tab, you can see that all of these transformations actually appear in the URL itself. So this is, let's say, on a rock with snowy mountains behind, and I'm then doing a resize to make sure that it's 1080 by 1080 pixels. I'm using generative fill over there. And then I have all my layer transformations that we had just seen, right? So I have three different variations with the change background on a table in a cafe with an espresso machine and cafe vibes blurred in the background, and then on a park bench with trees and flowers behind it, right? So now imagine you had just one product image that you had shot, right? And you wanted to do a refresh of the creatives that you have been running on your social ads, or you wanted to experiment with a new kind of product image or a new lifestyle shot for your product on your website and see how that impacts conversions for your users or the engagement for your users. You can use generative AI features to actually test that out really quickly without having to invest in a reshoot and then converting it into a full-fledged banner using the layer transformations. Let's look at another example I have of an Indian apparel brand applicable to any kind of apparel as well. This is the original image. It actually comes from one of our customers, the loom.in. In the original image, the background is, let's say, a blue door with, let's say, a slightly yellow beige kind of wall, wooden flooring. The first variant that I have created is I have just changed the background. The subject and the dress, obviously, in this image remains the same. We've just changed the background to be a textured, grainy, white colored wall with a green planter on the left, right? Now, in this particular case, because it's an actual person standing in an image and the actual product needs to be represented correctly, I have not used generate image at all, right? I have not used the generate image from scratch at all, except for one example that I'll show at the very end, and you would be able to figure out the difference. I have tried some other, let's say, variations as well. So the same previous background, but then I have used it with the gen fill transformation that we saw earlier to convert it to a 1080 by 1080 image. And then I'm using the layer transformations to apply this text at the bottom and the TNC apply text at the bottom. A slightly different variation with the generate background, a light beige textured grainy wall with a light green wooden door tall pampas grass on the left, right? So this is very similar to the original background that we had. But if you see, we did not have to go for a reshoot, and we created a completely new creative in both the cases, right? So if you just want to do a creative refresh, even if I forget about the layers that I've added, right? If you just want to do a creative refresh for the images that you have, the change background feature is actually really great at that, right? And this is the last one where we have the same background that was generated in this step, but this time I have used it with generative fill to stretch it to a 1200 by 683 dimension, which is, let's say, good for putting it up on Facebook. And I have just changed the placement of the text and put it on the left side of the image, right? Now, this last one that I have, which is what I was mentioning, that this last one is actually created completely from scratch, right? So while I have provided a very detailed prompt, and I've provided this detailed prompt to our upcoming image generation API, the detailing in itself is great, but this actually may not match any of the products that, or let's say any of the apparel items that the company might be selling. While this looks accurate as, let's say, just an Indian person wearing, let's say, an Indian dress, in the background that I have described. So it's great at that. It makes a great, let's say, creative to go out on social media or maybe to run an ad. But if you actually want to use products that are actually there in your catalog, then you should not be using AI generated variants in that case. You should only be using prompts to change the background for an existing image to be able to create these new creatives, right? There are a few more things to keep in mind. We'll just quickly run through that. While I was doing the demo, because I've already done, let's say I've already created these transformations. So the AI transformations were loading almost instantly. But in reality, they do take time. You can expect AI transformations to take between 10 to 30 seconds on an average. So you should, let's say, when you are trying to build this into your workflow, or let's say use this inside your applications, you should account for that time that it would take for a new AI transformation to happen, right? But once that AI transformation happens, and you are using, let's say you are using it correctly with, the chain transformation or the step transformations that we had talked about earlier, right? If you're using that correctly, then the output of one particular AI transformation would be usable instantly for other transformations itself, right? You should also keep in mind that for getting anything related to generated AI right, you might need to experiment with different kind of prompts. It usually takes at least 3 or 4 iterations to get to the right prompt or to the right background that you want. So whatever workflow you build, whether that uses ImageKit or not, or it uses some other, let's say, image generation model. But you should take into account the fact that it would take more than one iteration to actually be able to generate something that's usable for your team on production, right? Uh, a common question that's asked by our customers on data security and sharing. We do not actually share any of your data, whether it's, let's say, data uploaded to ImageKit or data that is being delivered by ImageKit. We do not share it with any third-party models for training at all, right? So the AI features that we looked at, they are a mix of, let's say, some internally built features. Some of them are provided by third-party services. We do not share your data for training of any of these models. However, if you're using a service that's actually being provided by a third party, then the third party may utilize the prompt that you give, or let's say the input image that you give, to do some analysis maybe at your end. Most of the services don't actually use it, but still there might be a few cases where it can get used. The details of that can be either found, let's say, on the respective third party's website, or if you have some questions, you can just reach out to us at support@imagekit.io, and we would be happy to guide you on what those third parties terms are. And whatever you generate using any of these AI features, or by using subsequent ImageKit transformations on top of what you generated with AI, it's completely free for you to use in whichever way you want to, on whatever platform you want to use, right? So you hold the copyright to that particular image that you have generated. The last part, which is the pricing of these AI features, they are completely usage-based pricing. If you do not use any of these AI features, it does not change how you get billed in ImageKit. If you want to use a lot of these AI features, we do have bulk pricing available for you. You just need to reach out to your customer success representative or reach out to us on support@imagekit.io, and we would be happy to set it up for you. Alternatively, if you do not want to use it at all, and if you want to just lock down your account against any kind of AI transformations, you can just turn off these AI transformations from settings and go to images security, and you can set the signed URLs to be, for AI transformations to always use signed URLs. That would basically just lock down AI transformations in your account and no one would be able to use it. Um, the actual cost of using these transformation varies by operation, right? So there are different kinds of operations that we looked at during this webinar. The actual unit is called extension units, which is, let's say, one of the line items that you might see in your subscription. If you do not use if you do not use the GenAI features, there would be no extension units that get consumed. You can get the details about what's the exact number of units a particular transformation consumes, or let's say the number of units that are available to you. You would find those details inside your ImageKit dashboard on the subscription details page. And you can also find it in the documentation of our product, right? And you are billed only once for a transformation, right? For example, if you did a remove BG operation or a remove background operation once, and then you are doing, let's say, subsequent resizing on top of that remove background operation, then you won't be charged again and again, as long as you are ensuring that the remove background is done in a separate step from the rest of the resize, right? So that's why using those colon as a separator or using different steps of transformations is really important, that it ensures that the actual AI transformation is being done only once and you get billed only once for that transformation. There are some new AI and Gen AI features that are coming up in ImageKit apart from the ones that we have already discussed. We already talked about the improved image generation model that's coming up. We are working a lot on videos as well. So being able to create videos from text, or let's say being able to create videos from image, being able to smart crop a video, making sure that the subject always stays in the center of the video regardless of the aspect ratio that you decide to crop it in, being able to automatically transcribe the video and be able to use that transcription to search for, let's say, actual content inside a video, right? So these are some of the features that are video related and are coming soon in our product. All the transformations that we saw, you saw that I was actually using the URL based transformations to generate images or to change the background. Marketing or creative teams might want something in the user interface itself, so we are coming up with an AI editor that would be available inside the dashboard, that would make it easier for non-technical people who do not actually have to integrate these transformations in the code to be able to use them at scale as well. And then we also have an automatic image captioning service that's coming in, which would be able to describe any image that you upload to ImageKit and be able to use that description either, let's say, on different platforms for accessibility or to be able to search, let's say, content that's stored inside the media library. Right. So that brings us to the end of the webinar. I'll just take a look at, I think there are a few questions that have come up, right? So let's just answer that. Can we change the size and the placement of the subject image, move the car to the middle left side, make it further away in the frame, and then generate a background like a curved road? It should be possible. It's I think a mix of a few transformations that we'll need to do before we do an actual change background, right? So for example, we'll first need to just resize the image in a way that the car actually appears on the middle left side, and it's sort of, let's say, a bit zoomed out, right? So that's a combination of the resize and crop parameters and in ImageKit. Once we are able to get to that state, like we're able to get to a stage where the car image is at the desired place that you would want it to be in the final image, then we can trigger a generate background on that particular resized image, right? So generate background will actually need to happen at the very end after you have got the image or the car in the right place. Um, are these the next question is, I hope this answers your question. And if you still want to follow up on this, just reach out to your CSM or email us at support@imagekit.io. The next question is, are these included in our transformation options or there are extra costs? So like I'd mentioned, AI transformations are chargeable. Depending on the kind of transformation that you want to use, the charges for this are actually mentioned inside our docs. I'll just quickly show that to everyone. Right, so if you go to doc/AI transformations or under image transformations over here, you would be able to see the different kinds of transformations that are available and the extension units that each transformation consumes over here. Some of these are free as well, but the transformation that we specifically looked at in this webinar are chargeable, right? And the number of extension units that you have available in your plan would be available inside your own dashboard, right? Um, how does this work with less resolution images, right? So there are a couple of transformations that could be useful for if you have low resolution images. We have an upscale and a retouch transformation. I did not cover them in this webinar, but the upscale transformation would be able to enhance a low resolution image and increase the resolution to, I think, 4x of the original resolution. And the retouch transformation does not increase the resolution, but it tries to add more detail or more clarity to the existing image itself. So again, documentation for these is available in the AI transformations documentation, and I would suggest that you do check that out. The next question, can it remove the background completely to generate a PNG image? Yes, it can do that. It was in fact one of the first examples that we looked at. Maybe if you joined in a little late, you would be able to see it in the recording, but it can actually remove the background completely, right? Just by applying this transformation, the background of the input images at the top gets completely removed in the images at the bottom, right? The follow-up question to that is, can we change the color of an element or create an element itself in the existing image, in the generated image, right? So if you're talking about, let's say, changing the color of, let's say, the product itself, so we do not make any changes to the product. If you're talking about changing the color of an element itself, so for example, in this case, it's, let's say, a golden brown uh, piece of cloth that's kept in the background. Maybe if you want to turn it into silver, currently that's not possible, but you would be able to generate maybe a similar background by providing a matching prompt, and instead, describing it as a silver satin cloth maybe in the background, you would be able to generate that. But as of now, the change background prompt does not change specific parts of an image or does not insert things into a specific part of an image. It creates a completely new background in itself, right? Can we adjust the font that is generated, right? So all the options that we saw are actually modifiable, right? So right from, let's say, your font size to your font color to even the font face that you want to use, there are a few font faces that are supported by default in ImageKit, but if you have some custom font that you want to use, that's also possible. You just need to upload it to the media library that you get, and you would be able to use that in your text, right? So for example, there is a list of transformations that we support. So if you want to change the font face, there is a transformation FF, which allows you to use any of the fonts that are by default supported in ImageKit, or even use a custom font for that. Or if there is anything else that you want to change, let's say for the font, you would find all the options available inside the documentation. What transformations are available to free users? So all the transformations are available to free users. However, free users will have a cap on the total number of extension units that are available to them. You can find that cap inside your dashboard by basically looking at the plan and the number of extension units that are available to you. And then you will get a sense of how many extension units does each transformation consume. And you would be able to see how many operations you can do on a free plan that you are on right now, right? So I think, yeah, that resolves all the questions that we had. If in case you do have more questions, that were, let's say, not answered during this webinar, or I did not cover them later on, or you want to get into a deeper discussion with our team and you have a use case that you want to discuss if we can solve or not, just reach out to us at support@imagekit.io. Or if you have a customer success manager assigned to you, you can reach out to them directly as well. And we would be happy to answer these questions or set up a demo for you online. But I hope this webinar was helpful and you were able to identify some use cases that you can maybe uh, develop, or let's say develop upon, or maybe implement in your business, and get those, let's say, make those generative AI transformations actually useful for your production images and on your production website. So that's it from our side. It's been great speaking with all of you, and I look forward to getting any questions on our support channel if you have some questions that you want to ask us. Till then, take care. Have a good day.